IVM.
How do you do good journalism online? How do you keep opinion and reportage separate? And how do you report live on active humanitarian disasters like the Kerala floods of 2018? Dhanya Rajendran of the News Minute joins us on the Pragati Podcast to talk to us about it.
Welcome to the Pragati Podcast, a weekly talk show on public policy, economics, and international relations. We are your hosts, Hamsini Hariharan
and Pavan Srinath. Dhanya Rajendran is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of TNM, the News Minute. TNM is an English-language digital news platform that focuses largely on South India and has become the go-to source for all things South between 2004 and now. Dhanya joins us on the Pragati Podcast today to share the TNM story about how they went about building a digital news platform. She also shares highlights from their 4 years of doing excellent work, and this includes the arrest of the former Tamil Nadu Chief Minister J. Jayalalitha, about their coverage of the natural disasters like the Kerala floods, the Chennai and Tamil Nadu floods of 2015, and a whole lot more. Full disclosure, both Pragati and TNM have received financial support from IPSMF, the Independent Public-Spirited Media Foundation. It goes without saying that all views expressed here are personal and entirely ours. And hey, do you subscribe to the Pragati Podcast on iTunes? If so, please leave us a rating. It means a lot to us. We'll be back with Dhanya Rajendran after this short break.
So it's been another great week on IVM Podcast, just like it is every week. If you aren't following us on social media, you should. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Send us a message, send us a comment. Let us know what you think about the stuff that we're doing and the stuff that you're listening to. This week on Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by writer Vrishali Telang. She speaks about jumping from TV to books and her memories of producing MTV Loveline. On the Seen and the Unseen, Amit is joined by founder-editor of The Wire, Sidharth Bhatia, and senior editor of The Hindu, Peter Griffin. They discuss the current state of Indian media and the role of journalists today. This week, Indranil Guha, co-founder of FinPech, talks to Anupam on Paisa Vaisa about alpha SIPs. Last week on Know Your Kanun, lawyer and host Amber Rana took us through the history and scope of Section 497 and the time when adultery was first recognized as an offense. On the Kinetic Living podcast, Urmi spoke to IVM's co-founder Kavita Rajwade about her love for functional training, food, and the morning workout routine that she strictly follows. And again, guys, I just really want to remind you, the best way to spread the word about podcasting is you. You're our ambassadors. Please go out and tell a friend. Ask them to listen to something that you have enjoyed and that you think that they would enjoy as well. And with that, let's move on with the show.
Welcome back. Hi, Dhanya. Welcome to the Pragati Podcast.
Thank you, Pavan.
It's a pleasure to have you here. In the last few years, we've seen a lot of media startups, right? Especially online media. And often I'm left wondering what's the premise of this. Some of it is opinion only. Some of this is catering towards one section of the political spectrum. But what I found really interesting with the News Minute was that you have a South India focus. And honestly, since the News Minute has started, I and many others have been following news around the southern half of the subcontinent, largely from News Minute, and we hear about it first there, and next day we might read more about it on Deccan Herald or somewhere else. But if we really want to know what's happening right now, News Minute is where we turn to. So tell us a little more about how you started, why you started this, and where you sort of come to.
So I was a television journalist for 8 to 9 years before I started the News Minute. When I quit television, I was clear that I will not go back to television again, though I did have offers to do the same job. No matter how senior you are, in a bureau, you end up waiting at somebody's house for hours and hours sitting on a platform. So I was clear that I don't want to do that again. I had no idea what I wanted to start. Someone said start a website. And I actually started this without even knowing that I have to pay for the server. I thought the World Wide Web is a free space where I can do everything. And the moment I start something, millions of people will just come and click. Obviously, it was not so. Hardly 100 people will read a story. And so it was an eye-opener the first 3-4 months because I had no clue as to what I was doing. I had 2 other employees. One was an intern and one was a reporter. And we would just aggregate other people's stories. We would sometimes write our own stuff.
This is which year?
2014. So that just went in a haze. Till I think we started in March, but I had no clue what I was doing till around October, November. Even if you go back to the News Minute, thankfully that site is no longer there. if you see the headlines and what we wrote, I now laugh thinking, oh my God, did we actually do all this? But then
and 2014 was a
the
pretty
election
uneventful year. No, nothing happened
but
in
the
the country.
election happened that year. So then I started noticing that whatever were our original reports, people were actually reading that. Even if it's 1 week, an original report which we did got many more readers than when we would aggregate other people's stories. And then my co-founder, Vignesh, he said, okay, we will then maybe do more original reporting. And it was his idea that since I have reported only from the southern states, and I was a South Bureau Chief of Times now, so I do have decent contacts in all the states. So he said, why not focus only on the southern states? And also the whole point of the News Minute, when it started, was simply to bring news which people don't notice or which should have been a major headline, but it was relegated to a 4th page of a newspaper. So that was always the concept of News Minute. But the South focus came, I think, around 5 to 6 months later. And then we hired more reporters in bureaus. We started with like 6-7 people, but whatever we wrote ourselves was garnering more attention. And from the beginning, I was very particular that I will not get into the cycle of breaking news.
Right.
In the sense that one of the earlier stories which gave us, gained us brownie points in the game of credibility was when Jayalalitha had gone to jail. And her bail case had come up in the Karnataka High Court.
Right.
So the bail case went on for a long time and nobody's telephones were working properly inside. So the prosecution just simply said that we are not going to oppose the bail. So when the prosecution said that, everybody assumed that she got bail. And the AIDMK cadre outside started celebrating and all the channels broke the story. All the newspapers, like the big ones, broke the story that she got bail. So I told my office, no, she hasn't got bail. Wait, the judge is hearing the case. After 1.5 hours, we put out a breaking news saying her bail has been rejected. We were the only ones who did that. But that taught me a lesson in the beginning itself that even if you're 1 hour late, 2 hours late, even if you give the right information, people will start appreciating that. And that's the philosophy we've been following throughout.
With a lot of online, especially online only websites, there are no boots on the ground, right? There are very few reporters, if at all. Most of them are opinion houses. And even at Pragati, I mean, we explicitly know that we are doing opinion only a little bit. And you have more traditional media houses which put reporters on the ground. So what do you think the difference is? Because many times we see that the online properties of existing media sites are an afterthought. They are not the sources of revenue. So you will see some breaking news in the print space sort of come up online on social media, but it sort of always feels a little different, right? Whereas with News Minute, this is your end all, this is your primary product. So does that bring in a different lens when you do this?
So I have a position on opinion. For example, reporters who join News Minute, I tell them, your opinion doesn't matter.
Right.
When it comes to news. You can tweet your opinion, you can Facebook your opinion, I don't have a problem. But that is not coming within your news copy.
Right.
I mean, when people join, especially people who join right fresh out of colleges, I've seen that they think their opinion matters. I have reported from Tamil Nadu for 10 years. I'm still very, very reluctant to actually share my opinion. At the end of the day, should my opinion matter? And even if it does, should I be saying it loud all the time? These are things which I ask myself as a reporter all the time. And that's the whole philosophy. I mean, there are people who are eligible enough, who have the knowledge to write opinions. So the News Minute is very clear. We are only people who write news reports from the ground. We may have certain opinion pieces, but we are largely a news reporting organization. And that's what we will remain. I mean, so much more easier to churn out opinions. You just have to sit in your office and watch something else. Like, for example, yesterday the Madras High Court has said that there should be separate toll booths for judges.
And VIPs.
Yes, I can actually write 3 opinion pieces on it immediately. But my point is to simply report that it happened. And I'm sure there are more capable people who will give opinions. So for me, keeping news and opinion separate is very important.
What is opinion? Idea of even opinion is supposed to be analysis rather than I think that this person's good or this person's bad, right? So an analysis can often be technical. And technical analysis usually stays far away from politics, right? He will win or she will win, or he will be a better prime minister or she will be a better minister of some sort. Is very different from saying, okay, this is where our economy is at, these are the numbers, this is what it says, right? I mean, those themselves are two different beasts, which is sort of the same thing, the difference between, say, a detailed survey and an opinion poll, right? Where Again, you're asking who will win and who will you vote for. Coming from there to where you are today in 2018. So you started off, like you said,
Without a clue.
Most of us start without a clue, but then you figure something out along the way. But tell us about News Minute today. What's your team like? What do you do? How do you cover all of South India, which is like half of Europe, if you look at the size of it?
We obviously cannot cover all of South India. We try to do as much as possible. The team strength is 40 now, which is including everyone, as in the video team, those who are not in editorial. Everything together, we're just 40 people, which is a very recent thing. Till now, we were 30. In the last 2 or 3 months, we have actually become a size 40 team. So as far as reporting goes also, we can't do everything, right? We cannot compete with the Hindu or the Deccan Herald or the Deccan Chronicle, which has, say, 15 reporters in a city. I have 2 reporters in Bangalore, 2 reporters in Chennai. So I've told my reporters, there is no undue pressure on you to cover every story. There is absolutely, people can read every story on those newspapers. But if we are choosing a story, then we go all out on that story. For example, when an IT professional, Swati, was killed in Chennai in the railway station, we decided we go all out on that story. So we put all our resources on that one story in which we bring out a lot of angles when Rohit Vemula died. So these are things we choose. Okay. Then we go all out on a story. But otherwise, we play to our strengths. What are our strengths? Our strengths are basically doing better ground reports. We start conversations on feminism. So what are our strengths we play to those. Until now, it's worked. Sometimes, yes, I do lose focus. As in, I want to do everything and then it ends up like an avial if you have eaten that dish.
Yes.
So then I tell myself, no, that's not happening. You have to just focus on your strengths.
So more padampuri than avial.
Yes, obviously.
Okay, so in depth, but how do you pick these stories?
That's instinct.
All right. But give me then diverse sets of examples of stories that you've picked and chosen. So this was a clear Rohit Vemula. we know this was a nationally important
we had been following
story.
Rohit Vemula's story much before his suicide.
Okay.
I'm not talking about after Rohit Vemula's suicide.
Right.
I have a reporter called Nitin in Hyderabad who used to write about what is happening in that university almost on a daily basis. So it was not a story we picked up when Rohit Vemula died. It was a story which we had written about their struggles at least 1 or 2 months before the death itself. So that was a story we associated with a lot. Okay. Or let's say Sterlite issue in Tamil Nadu. Something we write consistently about. There are different issues. There's readership for some of it. There's no readership for some of it. Nobody reads certain stories. But still we have invested our time and energy into it because I think this is all a record of history. Right? So we keep that because that is our duty to journalism. That's it. If clicks are going to decide what story we should follow, then we should have done millions of stories on Sochi leaks.
Right. And stick to the film industries of all the 4 states and
things
you would
like
get
that.
enough
Even the film industry, we are very, very careful. For the first time, we actually have 2-3 reporters in our features team. We generally had 2 people. Now we have 4 or 5. But we are very categorical. We'll not write about people losing weight for a role or who's dating who's dumped who. So we have a lot of standards on what we will write. Our movie reviews, we keep our reviewers away from actors because there is no burden on the reviewers to get an actor's interview. And actors do not give interviews to people if the review has been bad.
Right.
So these are things which I have learned from being part of mainstream media. So I try to avoid that in the News Minute.
Could you also tell us a little about how you then look at when breaking news is something else, right? Like what happened in Kerala. Can you tell us a little about how you sort of started covering the entire disaster, a little bit about how difficult it is, just physically to be able to get the kinds of stories that you want? Just with what happened in Kerala, how much of your team was in and around Kerala and covering Kerala?
5 reporters on the ground.
Okay.
And the desk, of course, took care of all the live blogs and putting out stories. So we have an efficient system where if the reporter cannot type the story, there is someone on the desk who will write it down and then put it out immediately.
Okay.
And I insist that anyone who joins the News Minute should read at least 1 or 2 languages from the South.
Okay.
So obviously they keep a watch as to what is happening and the desk is sufficient to put out stories, right? So in Kerala, see, there are 2 things. One, as a news organization, should you get involved in helping people? And the second is to only do stories of the crisis. Now, when Chennai floods happened, we had only, I think, 11 or 12 people in office. But we got heavily involved in relief and rescue.
All right.
That is also because at that time, I had good access to Chief Minister Jayalalitha's office. And a lot of telephones in Tamil Nadu were not working, in Chennai were not working. People had data, they didn't have calls, stuff like that. So they would keep sending SOS messages to us. We would filter the really serious ones and pass on to either the commissioner, the corporation commissioner, or to the chief minister's office. So we did, and then Times Now tied up with us at that time. Twitter tied up with us. So we were filtering all these SOS messages. Then the next step came to sending relief. So a lot of these people who had already formed groups in Chennai, they would coordinate with us in sending it to Chennai or Cuddalore. But what happened at that time was that the site was almost non-functional. In the sense that we could hardly put out stories. Like I kept 2 people in my staff to write stories on Chennai floods because everyone were managing the call center. People were calling, we were doing messaging.
But in a sense, the story was also evolving on social media, right? I mean,
It
all
was,
of us
but I'm
could
saying
see...
the News Minute as a website had very less stories during Chennai floods because we simply did not have the time to do stories as we were fully involved in relief and rescue. So when Kerala floods came, we are a larger organization now. So even if like 10 of us are on the ground writing stories, there were 5 other people who could do some sort of help. And I think during the Kerala floods, that's the model which evolved, right? Even news channels in Malayalam, newspapers in Malayalam, especially news channels, they became a system wherein people could actually call and tell that I am in trouble. I remember a guy called Nitin who was calling from a hospital in Aluva. There were 6 pregnant women, all of whom had their due dates in the next 1 or 2 days. And there was not a single doctor. There were nurses. There was no electricity in that hospital and they had to be taken to Rajgiri College in Aluva. So he kept calling all news channels. He spoke to us. So it was through the news channels that the government came to know about it and they rescued these women. So I think in Kerala floods, we have had a better evolved model of the media actually helping people in crisis and not simply reporting things and sometimes adding to the panic, which is something that we've also now sort of figured out. Okay, this is my strength. I know how to pass on a message to NDRF or to the Navy. I am in contact with the Kerala government. So if someone really needs help, I can tell them. So we figured out what our strengths are, but we do not compromise with our reporting also.
Are there then issues of access sometimes, or do people like the NDRF in a time of crisis see you as a credible source of forwarding information or other things for relief and rescue? Because at times you might also have to be critical of those same agencies, right? If they're not doing well enough, if they're not deploying resources properly and so on. How does that balance play out?
But that's a very difficult equation, right? In the sense, when I'm passing on an information to an NDRF commandant, thankfully there are a lot of them from Arakonam in Chennai who were deployed in Kerala, which is the reason why we had good access to them. Someone else knew the Naval Wives Club. So the wives of the Navy officers were actually taking these messages and passing on to the naval officers. So it happened in different ways. A friend of mine, Shivarur, who works with India Today in Delhi, I would pass on some of the messages to him and he would give it to the Navy. So you obviously evolve a system as it happens. Now, is the Navy really rescuing anyone that you're telling them to? We don't know. But our duty sort of is to verify the message, filter out. See, there are thousands and thousands of people who are stuck. So everybody's worried. All the families are worried. Everyone has kids and older people in their families. So you have to again filter out. Okay, if the kid is not unwell, if the older people are doing fine, then they are not into medical emergencies. So you have to again filter. So that is your duty. So the Kerala government, for example, the Kerala Rescue website told us specifically send medical emergencies. The Alapura collector would message back every time I sent him an SOS and say, yes, I'm passing on to the rescue teams. I have to take his word. Just as he has to take my word that this message is true, it has been verified. And that's the only way in which these systems can work. And the big lesson I have learned from the flood is that a lot of distress messages that we pass on are simply floating. No one's actually getting it. I went to a flood call center in Chalakudi in Thrissur district. It was completely shut because they did not even have SMS facility. Not a single network is working. So I asked them, hundreds of people are sending messages saying they want their relatives to be rescued. How exactly are you telling the people on the ground? They said, nothing. We are not able to pass on any message. They go from village to village, street to street, and they rescue. So we have to also understand that a large part of these operations are blind. But that cannot stop us from passing on the messages.
And in the context of this, there's also fake news and rumors floating around, right? And I remember one thing I think I saw on Twitter, you went to a place where there was a church or something else. And lots of people were saying this
They
church
were
is getting
stuck,
flooded.
but they had been rescued.
Right.
But the problem was the message was continuously doing the round saying, so, every time a message goes, the police go to check again, and it's such a waste of resource, right?
Right.
Like, I will never forget the pregnant woman from Mudichur in Chennai who was rescued, I think, on the first day of the flood, but that message went round and round till she had a baby. The family was so harassed that they are now shifted out of India, I think, if I'm not sure.
Wow.
They did not shift out because of this, but the woman, the husband, and the kid are outside India. And the family will never give access to them because they just want to forget the entire episode because the messages went round and round. Now, should I then tell a person who's tweeting saying, stop tweeting? I can tell one or two people, but you cannot stop a cycle of information like that. Right. And that's, I think...
that's the age we are living in, right?
I know. Or I think Twitter, Facebook, etc. have to have some sort of a edit tool where people can actually edit and say this matter is closed.
Right.
Otherwise, this chain of information, the same information being passed on is going to happen.
And that happened quite a bit in Kerala as well, right?
Yes, Kerala and Tamil Nadu.
Some of this is honest and genuine, right? So people genuinely think, look, this
most
person...
of it is honest and genuine. And people have understood that their social media accounts are actually a way to simply propagate more information or to draw attention to more information. So we cannot be stopping anyone from doing that. They're doing that out of good intent.
Right.
But the problem is it becomes an issue for people, the rescuers on the ground. Because if you ask somebody in the NDRF or the Navy or even fishermen who are in rescues, they will tell you how many times they've ended up going to the same place again and again, or that entire message that those persons have been rescued on the first day or the second day. But the family sitting somewhere else are unaware about it because there are no phones working, right?
Right.
But they end up going to the same place. So it is a lot of waste of time and energy. And I think without this technology breakdown, which we have to, I'm not sure how we are going to solve that. Every time a flood happens, your mobile networks just crash.
Right.
Every time there's a heavy rain, your mobile networks are gone. So unless those things are solved, I think we're going to see the same problem every time a crisis like this happens.
Right. Yeah. And we saw this with Mumbai first, Uttarakhand, Chennai, now Kerala. I mean, disaster preparedness also means that if there's a fire alarm that goes off in our building, whether it's a real fire or not, we should assemble downstairs, right? And sort of basic safety, the idea of doing drills and so on starts when you're in peacetime.
Which is again something which we witnessed in Kerala, that people do not listen to warnings. I mean, there is of course a criticism that the Kerala government did not give warnings to all people across all riverbanks. That is one. Of course, the government has to give better, more efficient and more timely warnings. The second is when warnings are given, people are not ready to come out.
Right.
So no one has seen a flood in Kerala where the water has gone beyond the first floor or second floor. So they assumed, okay, it will come to the first floor. I'm safe on the second floor. So a lot of people did not come out. In fact, I think after the main floods, which was on 15th, 16th, 17th of August, when Kuttanad alone was supposed to be vacated because another dam was going to be opened, people refused to come. I mean, I have gone with fishermen where the families would tell them, no, we are safe now. The water is not rising anymore. Because they are unaware that another dam is going to be opening. Right. They don't have phones. They don't have television. They're sitting in their houses believing they're safe. And nobody wants to come out because they're scared there'll be robbery, that their houses will be looted. So this irrational fear.
Right.
And those who do not, and another thing I witnessed a lot is those who do not have pattas for their lands, especially those who have encroached and they're living on the banks of the rivers, they go back there despite the houses being damaged because they're scared that if they stay away for more than a week in a relief camp, someone's just going to take that land away because they are encroachers, right? So they go back, and a lot of them have died in these floods.
Wow. And because they go back and then something else happens again.
A lot of them have died because they stayed back in these small houses which are next to the banks.
Right.
And despite that happening, they're all going back to the same place because they don't want that land to be taken away.
Right. Wow. So it's all of India's problems sort of coming to the fore in the time of a crisis,
Truly.
right?
Encroachments, government apathy, government not paying heed
and
to.
a culture of safety, right?
Which is something I think we don't appreciate at all.
Yeah, I mean, even when the helmet is for our protection, not for another person's protection, but we still don't want to wear it. All the way to, imagine you're a pilgrim, about to go to Kedarnath or Badrinath a week before the floods. And there is actually a warning which says in the next week, there is an 80% chance that there will be a cloudburst. Will people go? Not go. There's this whole idea of exceptionalism, right? I will be lucky. I will be safe. I'm taking all these precautions, and we don't necessarily listen to safety.
It's very true. Like for example, in Idukki district, where people had been asked to vacate because the Cheradoni Dam, the first dam, the dam which was opened, I think on August 8th or 9th, I forget the date. People were asked to vacate. When I reached there the first time when the dam was opened, people said no, it's only those who live by the river who are going to be affected. But soon what happened? There were landslides. Right. Because of the rain, and everyone had to be vacated. But before that, so many deaths happened. So people have to listen to warnings. There is absolutely no other way out. And I read a news story saying that Bangalore is going to witness heavy rains in the next month. Imagine if a Kerala-like rain happens in a city like Bangalore.
We are done for.
Exactly.
Bangalore's lucky because we've not gotten, even
that
now,
kind of rain.
We get 100, 120 mm of rain in a day, at least once in a year, if not twice.
I know.
And we all suffer. And we know it's going to happen sometime in the year.
Exactly.
And it's not happened in April or May or June, so it's going to happen in
I know people who've got
September.
boats in Koramangala. They actually have rubber boats because there's no other way out, right?
Yeah. So that's a larger conversation I think we need to have. But one of the things that I'm hopeful for in Kerala rather than anywhere else is if that conversation has to start about a culture of safety, maybe we have a better shot of it happening in Kerala than maybe many other parts of the country, as pessimistic as they may be. Like, for example, even Assam floods every year or 2 years, and we still don't have the full depth of stories of what all people suffered from in Assam, right? For the first time, I think in Kerala, we have such a vast array of what all happened.
True. Like, for example, Kadalur in Tamil Nadu gets flooded almost every 2 years, I think. But other than people doing 2 lives from there or 2 reports, those people also suffer a lot.
Right.
But they have a system now. They have evolved a system of somehow going to a relief camp or standing on top of your house because they know, okay, this is the amount of water that's going to come. But what if one year the rains are so heavy that the water levels are going to rise further? So people have to then improvise. But like you said, the culture of safety, that is something which we have to teach everyone. Otherwise, it is going to become problematic.
So thanks, Dhanya. That was an important sort of detour into disasters, covering them and managing them because you were on the ground seeing all this happen. But now to sort of step back to this culture of fake news that is there everywhere, right? So there are people forwarding all kinds of things on WhatsApp. How does that affect your general reportage, even beyond disasters? Do you feel the need to counter some of those things in your reportage? Do you try to stay agnostic? If the purpose is to sort of educate people on what's really happened.
This is again like the disease of breaking news. For example, if you contract the disease, you have to keep on breaking news. It's the same with fake news. If I want to bust all fake news, then that would be the only thing I'll be doing the entire day because there's just so much of fake news to bust. So again, it's a conscious call. I mean, all organizations cannot do it.
Right.
So if you're doing a story in which there is a fake news going around related to the story, you can bust it. But I think to consciously take a call to sit and bust fake news, that would require a lot of resources. Like if someone's ready to give me money to put 4 reporters only to bust fake news, sure, I can do it. But without that, I think the amount of fake news is just too humongous for us to sit and be busting it every day.
Right. So only on the stories that you follow, you try and put out the truth
and I think even if you're an online publication, you have to make sure that you follow the tenets of journalism. Like at least 2 people have to confirm your story. I tell my reporters specifically, even if a reporter has tweeted a story, you will still confirm it yourself. It's a court reporter, it's whoever it is, they tweet a story, you have to reconfirm that story. There is no way that a story is going because a secondary source told you. So these are small things. So maybe the number of stories which go out in a day decreases because your reporter has not got a confirmation. But I would rather take that risk than have the risk of running a wrong story. So we have been wrong, I think, twice or thrice in the last 2-3 years. There was a data story which we put up which was really wrong, and we got rogered for it. So I'm very careful with that now. So every time we do a wrong story, it's a lesson, right? Even for that reporter. So they're told, be careful, it's fine. Give it 2 hours, 3 hours late. But when you give it, you should be absolutely sure that it is a confirmed piece of news.
Okay. And so, that sort of comes to the business question of it. You are an online website. How do you end up making money? How do you build a business model around doing good journalism that's timely, that's
So I don't think
covering
any
deep
of the
stories?
online sites which have started in the last 4 or 5 years are making money. In the sense that I don't think anyone's become profitable that way. The smaller organizations like us can actually, maybe in 1 or 2 years, make enough money to sustain.
Okay.
So that we don't have to take external funding. We have enough money to run the show. But if you are, I know of organizations which have 80, 90, 100, 120 reporters, though they're online publications. I don't know what is the long-term game for them.
Okay.
Unless advertising in India changes dramatically and they're going to include websites a lot in there. Because, for most advertisers, a newspaper is still your primary source of advertising.
Right.
And the rates are very, very different as to what someone pays a newspaper or for an article on a website. Unless those things change, I think it matters as to what your team size is. Is it optimal? Can you actually make enough money to ensure that you can run that team?
Right.
So these are things which will slowly evolve, I think, in the next 1 or 2 years. Those people who cannot get investment or who cannot self-sustain will have to shut. So that I think the next 2-3 years we will know how fast this bubble is going to burst.
But even there, what do you see as promising? So there is the old school sort of banner ads and so on, which most people now filter out. They don't.
No, I think people are coming back to banner ads. I mean,
okay.
All those organizations which said we will not do banner ads, I can see banner ads on all of them.
Okay. The other thing that I've heard is interesting is sort of video ads. Apparently they're stickier and so therefore, so if someone's watching 5 minutes of video and there's a 20-second video ad, then...
So I'm actually the wrong person to be asking about money and advertising.
All right.
All that I know is that people are into different things now. One is you manage events, which is one stream of resource. The other, of course, there are the regular advertisements like banner ad or whatever those ads are. I mean, I get a lot of feedback from people saying there are too many ads in the news minute. Can you reduce them? I want to politely ask them, will you then give me the money to run? I mean, I have to have at least 5 ads. How do you expect me to run an organization? I'm sorry that it looks bad, but I don't have an option in life. Or there's, of course, the paid content, which is articles which are paid for.
Right.
I'm very particular that they have to have disclaimers. And I think most organizations, which started along with the News Minute, like The Wire or The Scroll, they have rules as to certain organizations that they will not take this content from.
Right.
And as long as that disclaimer is there in place, that is a third, mode of money for people. But if the disclaimer is not there and that's misused,
and if
then
it looks like everything
problem.
else on this website,
then that's a huge problem.
Right. Are you also toying with things like subscription?
Yes. So we are going to start an app.
Okay.
We are starting it in October, which will be a paid app.
Right.
It'll be $9.99 per year. That is a huge amount for most people. But I'm saying that don't pay for the app, but pay for our journalism. How do you expect us to self-sustain if you are not going to contribute anything to our journalism? So if you pay for that app, most of the things that you get in the website, you'll get in the app. But you may get some extra features, but don't pay for the extra features. Pay because you want to fund the News Minute's journalism. Right. So we are going to start a paid app in October.
That's excellent.
And I will send you a message and make sure that you've downloaded it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's funny that my guess is there are more New York Times subscribers in India than there are subscribers to Indian news outlets, right? And that's rather sad. I mean, I don't know how many subscribers The Economist has, but someone's willing to pay for it. So the idea is, I think, if there is credible journalism and also a credible message going out to people, then at least those who can afford to should start paying. I mean, the first time I learned that, this was about 8-10 years ago, that Pakistani newspapers are more expensive than Indian newspapers. People pay the equivalent of 15 rupees to 20 rupees for the newspaper that they get in the morning, Times of India, Deccan Herald, whatever equivalent. And in India, we pay less than 5 rupees, right? Which is less than the cost of that print.
Readers and viewers in India have to understand that you cannot be blaming journalism and the media for shoddy work when you're not ready to pay for it. I'll tell you a small example. How much do people who are listening to this podcast think a vernacular channel or a vernacular newspaper's reporter gets paid? Sometimes they get 3,000 to 6,000 a month.
Wow.
What do they do to sustain? They obviously end up taking bribes. Many of them don't. So they are in dire poverty. So many of them. It's not like the media house does not want to pay them. Many media houses don't have the resources to pay them. The others, of course, are stingy. They don't want to pay. So if viewers start or readers start paying more, then I think it will automatically mean more salaries, right? And then you can have better people working. Now, who will want to do a job for 6,000 to 10,000 rupees? They would do something else. So nobody wants to come into journalism. So this is a cycle. If you're not going to contribute to that cycle, then you end up getting shoddy things.
And if we don't pay for good news, then somebody else is paying for that news, and
exactly,
the news serves them rather than us.
So when I start an app, a paid app, I'm telling people, don't pay me for the app because you think I'll give you extra features. Pay me because this is the only way that you can actually tell me that I want to encourage your journalism. That's it.
Yes. And till we get to that stage, it remains a labor of love for people, right? I mean, it has to.
Exactly.
And for those for whom it is not a labor of love, it's something else, right? And so we sort of deserve the level of journalism that we don't pay
I'm
for.
I'm a very staunch believer of that.
Thank you for staying with us till the end. If you have any questions for Dhanya or for us, do write in to podcast@thinkpragati.com. Visit our website at thinkpragati.com for your daily dose of brain fodder on all things public policy.
You can subscribe to the Pragati Podcast on the IVM Podcast app or wherever else you get your podcasts from. We're there everywhere.
Shunyavan, 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 Shunyavan.
Hey, this is Shilalitya Mukhopadhyay.
And I'm Amit Doshi.
And we host Shunyavan, the weekly podcast based on conversations about startups, entrepreneurship, across verticals like food tech or fintech, and digital payments, logistics, e-commerce, and of course, all the stuff from VCs and investors as well.
Over the course of our run, we've had some really great entrepreneurs. We've had Zishan Hayat from Topper, Naya Sagi from Baby Chakra, Ankush Sachdev from ShareChat, and Akrit from Haptic, among many, many more.
Yep, and we continue to get some of the biggest, smartest, and most innovative folks in the country in this space coming here, talking to us, all for you guys to listen to.
So tune in every Tuesday on the IVM app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts from, and get a chance to be a part of all of the tech banter and entrepreneurship conversations on our Slack channel. Talk to our guests, they show up as well. All you have to do is request an invite on ivmpodcast.com/Shunyavan.
Give me a word. या कोई भी लाइन. कुछ भी हो सकता है यार. क्या कहा आपने? टोपी. Okay. Mohan Joshi hated wearing topis. He felt suffocated in them. टोपी पहनते ही उसे स्कूल की याद आती थी. Where of course he had no choice but to wear a topi. But जिस दिन pass out हुआ, उसी दिन उसने अपनी टोपी का bonfire बना दिया. And since then, he'd never worn a cap or a hat. ना कड़कती धूप में, and not even to बचो from the ठंडी. But from Monday 26th February, Mohan Joshi had to wear a topi all the time. Why? Because if he didn't, everyone around him knew exactly what क्या सोच रहा था. They knew that he was wondering how the girl in the yellow churidar would look बिना कपड़े के. They knew when he was calling the boss a सड़ेला टमाटर. They knew everything. पर ये सब हुआ कैसे? अरे भाई, यही तो स्टोरी है. और ये स्टोरी आप ही ने मुझे दिया by giving me the starting word. यही तो है The Croc's Tales. Words आपके, कहानी आपके लिए. Catch the stories on Monday and Thursday on the IVM website, app, and anywhere you get your podcast from. See you soon.